Clark.
They said we don't have a picture. No, I'm with Westbrook. Well, I'm with both. But you're looking at Westbrook's camera. It should be right here to the backpack. TDU number 1. Correct. No, Dami does not use the extra camera. We're going to get cutaways and reaction after the press conference. Yeah. Okay. So Paul's just reminding me that after this press conference, if you want me to go live, we'll need to switch mics. So, yeah, we'll just need a moment to do that. Okay. Sure. Yeah, you bet. I see about 5 or 6 members of the city council that are here. We're expecting that. Yeah. We're expecting that this will start shortly.
Everybody ready? I want to say good morning and thank each and every one of you for being here today. I want to especially extend a welcome and a note of gratitude to all the community leaders who are here with us as well. As you can see, for Sacramento, this is an important occasion to talk about some important things. And so we thank everyone who is here with us today. Let me give you a quick run of show so you have a sense of how we're going to conduct this press conference. I'm going to actually turn this over in a moment to Chief Hahn with the Sacramento Police Department, and then he'll turn it back over to me. And then we'll have the following individuals who will speak as well. We have the mayor of the city of Sacramento, Darrell Steinberg. We have the district attorney for the county of Sacramento, Anne Marie Schubert. We have Pastor Anthony Sadler, Pastor Bob Ballion, Dr. Ollie Mack, and Mr. Mark Havener, who will speak. I hope you will give each and every speaker your attention, and afterwards we'll take questions. Today is all about building and strengthening respect and trust between our communities and the men and women of law enforcement who are there to protect us. I believe that's what's essential to have and to achieve true and lasting public safety for our neighbors and for our peace officers. With that in mind, it's appropriate to ask, as I said earlier, Chief Daniel Hahn of the Sacramento Police Department to lead us in announcing today's decision. So at this stage, let me turn the microphone over to Chief Daniel Hahn.
Good morning. I'd first like to thank Attorney General Becerra. I appreciate your willingness to help our city and our community during this critical time and on this significant issue. On February 18th, our city experienced a tragedy that no one wants to see or experience, March. As our city's police chief, who has lived in this community my entire life, I'm dedicated to making sure that we gather all the facts, conduct a thorough investigation, and promise we will continue to be transparent throughout the process. Our community deserves nothing less. I also promise, regardless of the final outcome of this investigation, we will explore and implement ways to better serve our community and find ways to prevent this sort of tragedy in our city. That is my promise as this city's police chief and a lifelong member. It is in this same process that we announced the addition of the State Department of Justice being part of this investigation. I have complete confidence in the detectives in my department to accurately and impartially and thoroughly investigate this tragic incident. But due to the nature of this investigation, the extremely high emotions, anger, and hurt in our city, I felt it was the best interest of our entire community, including the members of our police department, to ask the Attorney General to be an independent part of this investigation. And Mr. Becerra agreed to be that independent body. Our city is at a critical point right now, and I believe this will help build faith and confidence in the investigation from our community. The Sacramento Police Department will provide full access and involvement for the Department of Justice investigators during the entire investigation. They will also provide an independent review of our policies and our training as it relates to use of force. I again would like to thank our Attorney General for his dedication to the Sacramento community through his willingness to be an independent part of this investigation. I'd also like to speak to the recent events in our city. Protest has a rich and positive place in our nation's history and definitely in our state and our city's history. As the capital of California, we often see the rights of protesters exercised in our city. But as we have seen, I am concerned that as a community, we exercise calm over the coming weeks and months, and that we don't have any more tragedies, injuries, or property damage, as that does not help us move forward and improve the city for all people. It is with this in mind, I want to thank the leaders in our community that are here with us today, supporting our city and being safe, the fraternities, the sororities, and the pastors that are here today. I thank all of them for being engaged in ensuring that everyone in our city is safe and has the opportunity to thrive. Lastly, I want to ensure our community that the police department will continue to be transparent and continue to openly share information that we can regarding this investigation. We released body-worn camera and helicopter video in unprecedented fashion within 3 days because that was the right thing to do for our community. We provided updates on some of the evidence in the case as we obtained it, and we will continue to do so. We want to be a leader not only in our state, but our nation in regards to what partnerships with our community look like and what transparency looks like, because that is what's best for our Sacramento community. I would also like to thank the men and women of the Sacramento Police Department who have been working many long hours over the last week. They have shown tremendous professionalism, patience, and dedication to our city. They have truly provided a tremendous service to our city during this very trying time. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the Attorney General.
I thank and respect Chief Daniel Hahn, and quite honestly, I thank and respect everyone in the community who made this call possible for us to come together this way. The California Department of Justice will now step in and provide independent oversight of this investigation into the shooting of Stephon Clark. My team and I at the California Department of Justice will do everything in our power to ensure that this investigation is fair, thorough, and impartial. I also want to thank and respect Chief Hahn for agreeing that the California Department of Justice's involvement in this matter will extend to include a review of the policing policies, procedures, and practices at the Sacramento Police Department. Although we will continue to coordinate with the Sacramento Police Department, we will retain our independence as we conduct this review. Our independent oversight of the investigation and our separate review of the department will be based on the facts and the law. Nothing more, nothing less. At this time, it's hard to say much more than that about either assignment, because one involves an ongoing investigation and the other has yet to commence. But I can tell you this: we take our responsibility in full recognition of the importance of getting it right, because it's about respect and trust. It's about identifying ways to achieve public safety and safer outcomes in the future. The California Department of Justice is here to live up to its name. We work with law enforcement and communities across California every day, and we work to uphold justice every day. Today, we take another important step towards strengthening the respect and trust that we need to keep Californians safe. With that, let me now turn the microphone over to our Mayor of Sacramento, Darrell Steinberg.
Good morning, everyone. I want to begin by thanking my colleagues for being here, the fraternity members, the pastors. I want to acknowledge all those in the community who have kept the peace on the community side, and the men and women of Sacramento's police department who have helped keep the peace in very real ways over the past week. I want to, of course, thank Chief Hahn for his consistent, outstanding, and steady leadership. Thank you to Anne Marie Schubert, our district attorney, who you're going to hear from in a moment, for not making this about turf when so much is at stake. A big thank you to our Attorney General Javier Becerra for stepping up big time and providing our community and all communities in California that extra assurance that the Stephon Clark investigation will be fair and impartial. You did not have to say yes. You did so. That is leadership. I'm also appreciative of the fact that the Attorney General is going to help us review our policies, protocols, and training around de-escalating conflict and the many questions that arise from the public's view of the Stephon Clark video. We appreciate this help, and at the same time, the city, working with our police chief and our police department, is on a parallel track going to begin our own aggressive look at the same policies, protocols, and training practices. As mayor of the proud city of Sacramento, I recognize that we have difficult days ahead as we grieve and confront the death of Stephon Clark, but for all that is within our control. These days, these weeks, and these months can also become the moment when our city and our country asked and answered the most important question: isn't there a better way? That question resounds not only in the interactions between law enforcement and our communities, but in every aspect of civic life, how we treat one another and how we go about creating genuine opportunity for all people in Sacramento. How we answer this question together around Stephon Clark's death will determine whether we divide and despair or whether we heal and hail justice and change. Today's announcement makes me even more confident that we will, in fact, achieve the latter. Like the chief, I call for peace and nonviolence everywhere, every day in our community. Violence must not beget violence. The country is watching us. Let us show how a city in pain, together with all of our partners, in fact, achieved a better way. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce our District Attorney, Anne Marie Schubert.
Morning, everybody. I want to echo what Chief Hahn and Mayor Steinberg said, is that I think there's no question that this is a tragedy in our community. I, too, was raised in this community. And any loss of life due to violence affects all of us. As a career prosecutor, I've sat with families that have lost loved ones, and their lives are forever impacted, and they'll never see the light of day the way they did before this. I also understand there's tremendous anger, there's tremendous grief, and there's also many that are distrustful of our system. And I also understand that any time a tragedy like this occurs, the public demands answers, and oftentimes they want those answers quickly. My job as your district attorney is to conduct a full, fair, and independent review of this shooting. At the end of the day, it's to follow the facts and the law. That is an oath that I took 28 years ago, to follow our ethics, to comply with our professional responsibilities, and to do our job. Understand that that process will take time. It will take time for law enforcement to complete their full, fair investigation. The review by our office will take time as well. A thorough, fair, and independent review demands that we do it right. I welcome the Attorney General's office providing independence, assistance, another layer of review. I have great respect for the Attorney General, Becerra. I know that he and I agree that what needs to occur is not simply that we follow the facts and the law, but that the community has faith that wherever that leads us, that we've done the right job. So I welcome the Attorney General's office in this assistance, and I hope and pray that the community understands what our roles are, and that at the end of the day we will do justice as the Attorney General said. Thank you. And at this time I'll introduce Pastor Sadler.
Thank you, DA. Let me begin my comment by first saying to the family of Stephon Clark, I can only imagine the hurt and the pain you must be feeling at this time. I have a son just a little older than Stephon was. Please know that our thoughts and our prayers and our concern is with you, because we are one city. I understand the community is concerned about the integrity of the investigation, but I would remind you that we are not some of the other major cities in the country that have had challenges. We are all one here in Sacramento. We are one of the most diverse cities in the nation, and we have an advantage of relationships that have already begun before this tragedy hit that we have to rely on now at a time to where we're asking for peace and trust. I believe that the addition of the AG's office to oversee this investigation is a wonderful step forward and a wonderful act of faith on our Chief Daniel Hahn's part to say he is being transparent, he is committed to being transparent, and an attempt to satisfy all the concerns of all our many wonderful constituents and citizens and community members here in Sacramento. I want to add my voice to those that have gone on before. We are calling for peace. We are calling for calm. We know that feelings and emotions are high, but we need to do this, again, as one city. This is Sacramento. We have an opportunity with the national spotlight not only to heal ourselves through the act of God, but to show a nation
Thank you, Pastor Sadler. I'm here more as a citizen of Sacramento than I am as a pastor. As Pastor Sadler said, I think everyone who has a heart is pained by what happened. We're talking this morning, we all, as clergy and as community members, want to help support the family and bring about healing for them and provide everything they need. I want to also say that personally I am for reform where reform is needed, whether that be in law or in training. We want that to happen. And having said all that, in Christian terms, Chief Hahn has been, he's the chosen one. We all wanted Chief Hahn in this position. Chief Hahn is the Messiah, and we need to give Chief Hahn, we need to give the Attorney General, we need to give the mayor, and now we need to give the Justice Department every opportunity to go through this investigation. I firmly believe my co-pastor Ephraim Smith and I are telling all of our congregation to pray for peace and to pray for calm. Sacramento, I would love to be a model city for the rest of the nation, as Pastor Sadler said. And so I'm praying that all of you are praying that all of our people feel the same way. Protests can happen, but it can happen in a way where the city remains standing. Thank you.
Dr. Ollie Mack.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Ollie Mack. I'm here to help represent the fraternities and sororities in Sacramento County. And I have been a resident of Sacramento for 30 years. I've been a resident of the United States of America for 68 years. So in that 68 years, I understand your concern. I understand your anger. I understand the frustration. But I know part of that frustration and anger has come from the fact that we don't believe our voices are being heard. We don't believe that we've got the ears of the right people to begin to make changes. But I think this time is different. I think this time Sacramento will be a role model for how these type of incidents should be investigated and responded to. I think that under these circumstances, your voices have been heard. We have the California Attorney General willing to become involved. We have the Sacramento District Attorney willing to become involved. And you know your voice has been heard when you have the National Basketball Association stepping up and doing public service announcements to bring this issue to the light of the country. So I say to you, we're doing our work, we're doing our job. What we don't want to do is distract from that message, to dilute that message. And just as your actions have been positive in getting people to hear the message. Negative actions will dilute that message. I can guarantee you that if you have people jumping on cars, spitting on people, that will be the news, and not the fact that we are moving forward towards seeking justice. So I say to you, if you want to honor the life of Stephon Clark, if you want to stand up and honor the wishes of the family, that we break this cycle of police interactions with men of color, then I say to you, stand up and don't let this message, which is so important to be gotten out, to be diluted by individuals who come in with a whole nother message. When you see those types of actions, know they're taking away your voice. They're distracting away from the message we want people to hear. So I say to you, stand up and honor the life of Stephon Clark. Stand up and honor the wishes of the family that we break this cycle. Stand up and do what we need to do, because if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Mark Havener.
Good morning, everyone. Mark Havener. I've been a citizen of Sacramento for over 20 years. I came to represent the community. A lot of what I was going to say, Dr. Mack already said, unfortunately.
Say it again.
I think we're at a turning point in Sacramento, and right now a lot of us are angry. You have every right to be angry. The way to voice that anger is through peaceful protest and through the vote. Like Dr. Mack said, if you let violence and vandalism enter into the picture, then you let other people send their message instead of you sending your message. So don't let others rewrite your message. Please give prayers to Stephon's family and for our police department. I thank the Attorney General, the Mayor, and our Chief of Police for allowing community members to even speak to the press today. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to the Attorney General.
Mark, thank you very much. I'm going to ask Chief Hahn to join me. We're going to try to take a few questions. I hope you'll recognize that, again, this is an ongoing investigation, and so our responses are going to be very directed so we can make sure that we give you as much information as we can, but limited as it might be, we'll try to give you our best responses. Any questions?
Attorney General,
Yes.
Sir, can you comment about how often or how experienced your office is in investigating officer-involved shootings specifically, and also the timeline? We know it's going to take a long time, but how long before recommendations and conclusion can be drawn?
The California Department of Justice has a history of investigating. We do any number of investigations, including on the law enforcement side and in criminal matters as well. What we intend to do, working with the City of Sacramento and with Chief Hahn and the Police Department, is make sure that we can provide oversight, some independent eyes to the investigation that's underway. We're not taking over the investigation, but we are providing independent oversight of the investigation with some members of our team who have experience doing this. We will, as I said as well, be in the process of sitting down with police department leaders, city leaders, and I hope we get the involvement of the members of the community in trying to talk about moving forward the policing practices, procedures, and policies that are employed here in Sacramento, which we hope, if we do it right, and I think everyone you've heard speak is hoping so, that we'll become a model here in Sacramento for other jurisdictions as well.
Timeline?
That would be hard to give you any impression on that, since the investigation is right now underway.
Attorney General, other states have, if there's a police-involved shooting, a different department would take over. Why does California not allow that, to have a state-run police department take over an investigation for a police department that has a police-involved shooting?
I'm sorry.
So, other state policies, the Sacramento PD is taking over this investigation. It's two of their officers. Why would another agency not step forward, another police agency not step forward before today that you all are doing oversight?
We have a pretty established practice in California of how we do investigations of these kinds. Also, under our laws and our Constitution, the California Department of Justice has the authority to undertake investigations. We don't have the type of resources that would allow us to undertake investigations in 58 different counties every time an incident occurs, whether it's a police officer involved shooting or some other type of incident. But we have independent authority to go in to try to either investigate or, in this case, work with the local authorities to try to provide independent eyes, as we've said before. And so it's really up to the legislature, and it's up to the people of this the state as to how we form our Constitution as to how these types of matters are investigated. But right now what we're doing is trying to provide as best a process that will give people the confidence to know that this investigation was done properly.
Who will have final say as to whether or not, say, charges are brought against the officers, whatever the resolution happens to be? Is it still in the hands of the DA?
We've not, and I'll let District Attorney Schubert as well answer if she'd like, but we're not intending to undermine local authority here. We're trying to provide an independent investigative arm to this investigation that occurs. I have independent authority as well to consider prosecution, and so we are hoping that the way this works out is that we have a process that will be, as I think Chief Hahn said, transparent, and will allow people to see how we take every step, including should there be any action after the investigation, including any potential prosecution. And so at this stage, the District Attorney Schubert, retains the authority to move forward. We're not changing any of that. And I continue to retain my independent authority to consider something beyond an investigative process and also prosecution.
Attorney General, as you have looked at the tape yourself, what are the questions that you personally have after watching it?
You know what? I have feelings the way everyone else does. I have my own particular views. But right now I'm speaking to you as the Attorney General for 40 million people. And more specifically for every person in the city of California that's hoping that we end up with a process that's fair, impartial, and thorough. And so right now, quite honestly, what's important is not how I feel or what I see. It's what the independent evidence will show, and that's the basis for us taking any action. Let me make sure if District Attorney Schubert wanted to respond to anything on the previous question.
I would just agree with the Attorney General. There's nothing about the DA's office abdicating their role and what our responsibilities are. As I said earlier, we're going to follow the facts and the law. We're going to do our job. But as I said also, I welcome the independent review by the Attorney General. So that's how the process is going to work.
As a little background, District Attorney, you did not file charges in the Joseph Mann shooting, which I think to many people seemed cut and dried. How is this different, and why? And if you can specifically explain publicly why you made that decision.
Let's do this. There's going to be lots of time for a lot of other questions. I want to make sure that while I've got the Chief here and I'm here, if you want to ask questions specifically about what we're doing today, we'll answer them. I'm sure that the District Attorney and others will be available to answer questions that go beyond what the purpose of this press conference is about.
Question for Chief Hahn, then.
Okay.
Chief Hahn, as noted, the investigation, the policy review, it's going to take time. Have you given any guidance to your officers to make sure the same thing doesn't happen on some dark street tonight?
Well, we always give, it's continual guidance of doing what is right at all times. So every situation is different, so that's a continual message to our officers, is to do what's right for our city.
But is pursuing someone who perhaps who broke the windows with guns drawn, is that appropriate?
Well, that's what the investigation will determine. But again, every situation an officer goes to is different. So there will never be one exactly that same way again. So that specific case will be part of this investigation.
I'd like to add something here. The chief, everybody is right. It would be unfair to prejudge the investigation, but there is a different way to answer your question, and we intend to do so. The Attorney General, the second part of the announcement is equally important, which is that the Attorney General over the weeks and months ahead is going to look at training protocols, the very kind of question that you asked, but so is the mayor and the city council together with the police chief. April the 10th, we are going to convene in our regular council meeting in public session to begin asking and answering a series of 10 or 11 questions that the community is asking arising out of watching the video. And so we're not going to wait until the end of the investigation to ask the policy, protocol, and training questions that everyone is asking. I think we can do that, and we can do it thoroughly without prejudging anything about this particular investigation.
Algo en español.
Sí, por favor, ¿qué significa esto? Que ahora el Departamento de Justicia va a hacer una investigación independiente.
And I'll say just a few remarks in Spanish because I can always say them afterwards as well. Este es un día importante porque lo que anunciamos hoy fue el resultado del jefe de la policía, Daniel Hahn, invitando al Departamento de Justicia entrar a esta investigación y revisar las prácticas del Departamento de Policía. Algo importante porque todos nosotros, como parte de la comunidad de Sacramento, queremos saber que podemos contar con la seguridad que merecemos para nuestros hijos. Y este día es importante porque los líderes de Sacramento, cívicos, los líderes políticos, nos hemos reunido para decir que vamos a tratar de darle al pueblo una respuesta a lo que sucedió hace un poco cuando murió Stephon Clark. Y ojalá lo que hacemos lo hacemos bien, porque el futuro depende mucho en cómo hacemos esto para nuestros hijos en el futuro.
Y usted también va a revisar los protocolos que se están llevando a cabo en el Departamento de Policía.
Precisamente. Other questions?
Attorney General, should there be a permanent statewide protocol for outside investigations of police shootings like other states have?
Look, let's focus on today. Let's focus on what we're doing here. What's important is that I think what we're coming together to announce is not only that we hope we do a thorough job of presenting a transparent set of facts on what happened in this incident, but a greater goal has to be that we're preventing, incidents like this in the future. And we have to dig deep to find out what that takes, because as I think Chief Hahn said, every circumstance is very different. And we owe it to everyone, whether it's the community, whether it's the officers who have to patrol these communities. We have to make sure that we're giving people a clear sense that public safety is what drives everything we do. And so going into what happens from this, let's do this right. If we do this right, that'll answer a lot of questions about where we go in the future.
Attorney General, specifically, you've spoken many times about transparency, but you haven't articulated exactly how the oversight of the DOJ increases the transparency of the investigation, and whether you have the ability to veto, to provide a minority report, to produce additional information into how that investigation is being conducted. And while you're addressing that, can you also say how many people you're assigning to that task force for that oversight?
The best thing I could tell you is we're going to put together a team that will have independent auditory review that will not be dependent on the Sacramento Police Department to conduct its affairs, that will be able to independently make assessments. We will not be doing the day-to-day ground activity of collecting the evidence, the forensics, but we'll be overseeing that. And I believe that what we're doing is providing the type of confidence that will let people know that the process was followed properly. I think what people want to know is that we really turned over every stone. And we're going to make sure every stone is turned.
So you're going to provide an independent report that essentially audits the process?
You're going ahead of me on this one. I think you just heard that the chief of police of the Department of Police here in Sacramento invited the Department of Justice to come in. That's pretty big. And I believe that he's showing trust and respect. I'm going to show him the same respect and trust as well. So I'm not going to prejudge what I have to do to make sure an independent review is accomplished. I believe that if we're all working with respect and trust, we can get this done together.
Attorney General, Ariane Tell, ABC 10. It's my understanding that the names of the police officers involved should be released within 10 days of the incident. We're on day 9. Will those names be released today?
Let me leave that question to Chief Hahn.
Well, the names have already been out there.
Mm-hmm.
We have not confirmed those names
Correct.
because we are concerned about the officers' safety because they have received numerous death threats. So we will continue to assess that as we go along, and if we don't feel like it endangers their lives, we will confirm those names.
Señor Becerra, lo han dicho en inglés, pero en español, ¿cuál es el mensaje para la comunidad y los manifestantes? Alguno de esos ejemplos es calma, paciencia, cosas por el estilo, ¿no?
Estamos pidiendo que la comunidad nos dé la oportunidad de conducir esta investigación, que si quieren manifestar, es el derecho de todos aquí en este país de expresarse, pero que se expresen en una manera cívica, que no viola la ley, porque es importante dejar que la comunidad sepa que vamos a perseguir la justicia en este caso.
Gracias. Thank you.
Any other questions?
You mentioned that you were invited into this investigation. How common is that? Have you ever had another police chief reach out to you and ask you to participate?
Well, as I think you heard, you've got a different police chief here in Sacramento first. I have in my slightly more than a year had local authorities ask the Department of Justice to come in. We are right now, for example, in San Francisco overseeing the implementation of 272 reforms by the San Francisco Police Department, and it is my department that is overseeing independently that reform process. We were invited in by the city of Sacramento, by then Mayor Ed Lee, who, may he rest in peace, passed suddenly, and was followed through by the city leadership in San Francisco. Sometimes we go in without being invited. But it helps when you're invited, because that means there's a partnership that can be formed and you can do this together. Look, I hope that this becomes something that we see more often, that local authorities feel comfortable having independent, it doesn't have to be the Department of Justice, but independent oversight, because they feel confident that transparency will prove that they are conducting themselves well. And so in this particular case, Daniel Hahn, who is someone that I've respected for quite some time, gave me an opportunity to do something. And I think it's important that the men and women of the Department of Justice be part of this with Chief Hahn.
Chief, how is this different from the Office of Accountability, Public Safety and Accountability and their review? Is there a different level of investigation or a different level of how this is going to be different from what already exists in the city?
Yeah, I don't think these conflict with each other. I think that's another independent look at it, but these folks are a part of the investigation and will be side by side with the investigators and provide that independent review as law enforcement investigators. So I think they complement each other nicely.
Chief, we've seen the impact that this has had on the community. What has the impact of this been inside your department?
Well, as I've said previously, this is a tragedy first and foremost for the family, but also for our entire community and also for the police department. The last week or so has been really trying times for our whole community, including the police officers that have to go out on the street every day and work in the protests and just handling calls. And so when I said this is good for our community. I also said it's good for our police officers, because the more our community trusts and has faith in the police department, that makes it that much better for the officers to work there also.
Told you I like this.
Can you speak to the backgrounds of the officers involved? As you said, yes, please, Chief. You had concerns about safety issues, but still questions about, whether or not either of them have ever been involved in an officer-involved shooting before, things like that. When can we find out that information?
And this will have to be the last question.
Yeah, we will start releasing things that we can, but right now we don't want to speak too much about the officers because, again, they've received death threats, and so we have to evaluate all those threats and determine how valid they are and then move forward. But as time goes on, all that will come out. I think hopefully our community has seen that we are extremely transparent. We have put out video and put out information as we get it. That's not typical, so we will continue to do that.
Thank you all very much, especially to our community leaders.